Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world and wherever you are watching. Today we're going to look into the comedy sideshow that was the Clacton by-election called by Nigel Farage after his resignation. Why did Nigel Farage resign? In May, the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner opened an investigation into Nigel Farage receiving a £5 million gift from Thailand-based crypto billionaire Christopher Harborn, and Farage also revealed another inquiry was underway over allegations he was financially supported by crypto gambler and convicted fraudster George Cockrell, who is also his close friend. So formal investigation was opened. There's no timeline of how long these investigations take. It's basically how long is a piece of string. But the sanctions are what is important here. So it ranges from issuing a formal apology in the House of Commons if found to have been in breach, to a more serious potential ban from the House of Commons, or suspension, sorry. A suspension of 10 days or more from the House of Commons would have instantly triggered a recall petition. The recall petition is then opened in the constituency of Clacton for 6 weeks exactly. If at the end of that 6 weeks 10% of residents have voted in favour of a by-election, Farage loses his seat and a by-election would have been called. So why did Farage call a by-election? So while Farage resigned and called a by-election, the investigation was paused. So it's kind of backfired because the morning that he was declared the winner, the investigation resumed. So him resigning and calling a by-election, he called it at a time of his choosing, and it was framed as a people versus the establishment. And in Farage's own words, to let the people of Clacton be the judges of his actions. As a side note, the people versus the establishment remark, it kind of doesn't hold up, not when you've got over 20 former Tory MPs and cabinet ministers in the ranks of your political party, and 5 of your 8 MPs are ex-Tory MPs who were pushed out or sacked. So much so, with the amount of Tories in reform, that it's been declared as the home of unwanted and unloved Tories, and as Tory 2.0 by opposing political parties. So yeah, the people versus the establishment mark, it is a bit hollow in my opinion, and probably in the opinion of others. So why was Farage being investigated anyway? So Farage received £5 million in the weeks before he announced he would be standing as a candidate in the 2024 general election. He hadn't made any inclination that he wanted to return to politics before then. So it's been rumbled that this £5 million was basically a sweetener to get him back into politics. New MPs are required to declare any interest covering the period up to a year before the election. Farage has repeatedly stated that the money was intended to cover his personal security costs and therefore it didn't need to be declared. When he was asked what happened to the money, he said it was an unconditional gift that he could spend how he wanted, and that he could spend it on Ferraris if he wanted, or he can put it on the horses. In his own words, I can do what I want with it. That'd be entirely up to me. Other parties have argued that the money coming from the Thailand-based businessman Christopher Harborn fell within the rules requiring MPs to declare any potentially relevant gifts or donations received in the 12 months before entering Parliament. The Investigation Commissioner for Standards is understood to have begun an investigation under Rule 5 of the Code of Conduct obliging MPs to fulfil conscientiously requirements related to their registration of interests. So while Farage was no longer an MP when he resigned and was called a by-election, the investigation was paused, but since he was re-elected, it was literally reactivated the same morning as the results were called. Other investigations that he's facing is allegations that he was financially supported by crypto gambler and convicted fraudster George Cottrell. It was reported at the start of July that Cottrell's support included security and social media staff who worked on Farage's online content in the year before he was elected. It was also reported that Farage used a property rented by Cottrell near Buckingham Palace. Farage responded typically by saying he had done no wrongdoing after he didn't declare the benefits provided by Cottrell. So what happens now? So as I've said, the investigation of Farage duly resumed the same day he was elected. Farage actually chose not to attend the announcement of his victory because a spokesperson from Reform said that Essex Police had advised Nigel not to attend the count due to a credible threat against him. Essex Police have since came out and said there was no such thing. So why did he turn up? Given his opponents were basically unknowns in the world of politics and he'd had to stand next to a bin, he probably realised that his publicity stunt had backfired and that given none of the major parties fielded candidates, that he wouldn't have had nothing to gloat against. The main parties refused to put in any other candidate, with the Chancellor of the time, Rachel Reeves, publicly saying that if Farage wants to spend his summer arguing with a bin, I'm not going to stop him. So what happens now? As I said, the investigation's been resumed. Again, there's no timeline of when that investigation will conclude, although there is rumblings that it could be around September. If he is found guilty, the same thing will happen. He could be forced to give a formal apology in the House of Commons, or if the breach is deemed serious enough, he could be suspended from the Commons. If it is more than 10 sitting days, then that recall petition is granted to the constituents of Clacton. It is then open for 6 weeks. After that 6 weeks, if the 10% is reached, then he will face yet another by-election. This time, the main political parties will be fielding candidates. The thing that stands out to me in the 2026 by-election, Count Binface got 26.93 of the vote. If that was a recall petition, it would be well over the 10% threshold to call another by-election. So when will this by-election happen? Who knows? The investigation's got to be concluded and the sanction meted out. So chances are nothing will probably happen by the end of this year. However, given politics is very fluid and a lot can change in a day, who knows? Nothing is certain. So you may ask what would happen to Farage if he lost any other by-election. He would lose his seat in the House of Commons, which would mean Reform's impact on the UK political stage would be severely diminished. His idea of getting into number 10 Downing Street at the next election would be severely constrained. However, he would still be allowed to stand in other by-elections if any were called around the country. Also, the ramifications could go even further, given that Reform has been touted as the anti-sleaze and anti-corruption party. If Farage was found guilty of financial wrongdoing, it would very much make him and his party look like the age-old saying that all politicians piss in the same pot. With that, what else could happen? Internal and public pressure could force Farage to stand down. Although, given Farage's stubbornness, he would probably fight it out to the last. If he were to stand down, and this is just conjecture, who would take over? Policy shifts, everything else, reform would probably be sent into disarray. And like I've said, given reform billed itself as the anti-slaves and anti-corruption party, given it's now embroiled in its own sleaze and scandals, again, people are starting to look at it and say, well, you're just like all the rest. So, yeah. Although Farage is making it the people versus the establishment, it very much looks like he's turning out to be like the rest of them. Time will tell. Politics in the UK is a very fickle thing. A lot can happen in 24 hours, and no doubt in the future there will be more looks at this when things transpire and when events start to gain traction and take roll. So with that, goodbye.